Hey everyone, welcome back to the Horse Geeks podcast, where we look at horses and riding from the inside out. I'm Kirsten Nelson, professional horse trainer, and with me today is a very new guest, different type of guest, Linda Drattell, and she has written a book of poetry about horses. And I am super excited. This is my first time interviewing an author. But when I read her poetry, I went, yeah, the woman knows horses. And I think it's such a beautiful perspective to put into poetry because some of the things that happen from the inside of us to the inside of our horse, it's very hard to find words for. And I think poetry kind of nails it.
Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it.
And can I mention that you also have lost your hearing as an adult?
Yes,
And
yes.
so,
Lost my hearing, and I find it very cathartic to write, to still be able to express myself and reach people, and them to enjoy conversing with me through my writing.
that is beautiful. It was beautiful. So, you've written a book of poetry that isn't released yet. It's coming out in about 2 weeks, and it's called The Lighter Side of Horse Manure. And you can pre-order it right now. I love the cover. Yes, The Lighter Side of Horse Manure with a happy horse on the front. And you're taking pre-orders right now with Amazon and different booksellers, but it will be
Right, you
officially.
can order through Amazon and also through BarnesandNoble.org, the online ordering. Bookshop.org for your local bookstores will also be carrying it. But I didn't see it on their website yet, but that will be coming as well.
Great. So I'm a little torn. Like I read the poetry itself, and your very first poem just grabbed me in a big way, and I read the whole book sitting on the airplane. And then when I read a little bit about your horse, Vegas, of course, I want to talk about Vegas, your horse. And so I'm not sure where to start. Do you have a preference to talk about Vegas and a little background or jump into some of the poetry?
I think it's helpful, maybe, well, first of all, my writing. I've been writing poetry since I was a teenager, but never tried to get anything published until a couple of years ago. And a lot of the poems in my other poetry book, Remember This Day,
Mm,
is includes those poems that I wrote many, many years ago. But I find that people find them prevalent today. And I started writing a novel, which I completed and have been trying to find an agent for. And so in the meantime, I thought, let me get back to poetry. I'm going to forget the novel. And
yeah,
so I just really got into poetry. And I joined Tri Valley Writers, which is part of the California Writers Club. And they have a poetry critique group. It's fantastic. And we all help each other. You know, we write things and we share, and suggestions are made. So that's how my poetry developed. And then I had Vegas. I have had him since he was 5 years old. I mean, it was love at first sight. This was a horse that was nasty to everybody. For some reason, he fell in love with me. So I said, I'm taking him. So he owned me for 29 years.
and
And we
that
did
is the
the
way
tail
it.
riding. And we tried our hand at dressage, but he wasn't going to do that. And then we had a guy who roped cattle try to teach us English writers how to rope cattle. And the pressure, you know, instead of doing a slight quiet English pressure, you have to be, you know, jumping and kicking your legs. Well, Vegas was very upset about that. And the next time I came to get him, he came up to me in the field and then stopped and swirled around in a circle. And then he stomped his feet as hard as he could and stared at me like, don't you ever try that again. So I said, okay, we won't.
No, that communication between people and horses, and the language of horses is not verbal. It's all energy and body language and behavior and expression. And you read Vegas so well. Like, I just loved your insights to his communication with you, which so many people just bypass that as communication and they label it good, bad, naughty, whatever, but it's just how horses express themselves is through energy and behavior and body language.
Yes.
And you
The only
really,
way they have.
yes.
Like I remember there was a time we decided, this was when I lived in Maryland, and it was Halloween and there was going to be a hayride with people. So we gave them fake money. And then the rest of us came chasing after the hayride with water pistols. And we were going to rob it. The only thing is nobody told the horses. We didn't practice for it. So we're chasing this hayride, and all of a sudden, all the horses freaked out because we're shooting water pistols, which they've never seen before. Vegas ends up throwing me.
Oh,
I got really angry. I was like, of course, I knew I was responsible, but I got angry. And so I marched him back to his field. And when we got back there, I said, that's it. I just don't want to talk right now. And I shut the gate. I turned to walk away. And at that time, I still had my hearing. I hear rattling. And I turn around and he has his mouth on the top of the gate and he's shaking it and staring at me like, I cannot walk away mad like that. I came back up and I said, okay. So we hugged over the fence and I said, I'm not mad at you. Everything's fine.
yes. Yes.
But yeah. I mean, that's the only ways that they have to communicate.
No, and it said you got Vegas when he was a 5-year-old and that you had him for 34 years. So he was
I had him for
39,
29 years. He died when he
29
was
years.
34.
Okay. Okay. I was going to say,
But that
wow.
was a typo
Okay.
and that got fixed.
Okay. So he passed at 34.
Yes.
No, and I have a mare. I'm now in Florida, but I lived not far from where you are in California when when I got one of my horses I still have now as a foal. And
Oh my
so
goodness.
she was given to me as a
Oh,
foal by a dear friend, and she is now 32.
awesome.
And there's something about a lot of professional trainers buy and sell horses, or when people have problems, or they have a horse that bites, like you described with Vega, or the vet hates him, the old owner hated him. He hadn't really found a person who kind of got him. But when we keep a horse, even if we don't get along with them at first, I think the longer we live with one horse, the more we learn about all horses.
Yes, and we identify with their aches and pains and realize as we get older what they're going through. But that
Yes.
very first poem in Lighter Side of Horse Manure, that was a barn manager that I brought Vegas over to. And at the beginning, she was very nice. But then she just thought that I should get rid of him, put him down, get a different horse. And I said, this horse is like my baby. He's been part of my family. He helped me raise my kids.
Yes.
You know, I used to ride in the snow with my daughter sitting in front, and the two of us go around getting blackberries or whatnot. And I said, you know, you don't just lightly put a horse down. And so she got mad. And so that's what I recorded in that poem.
Will you read that poem for us? That was the first poem in the
Here,
book, and it touched me
barn
so
manager hates
deeply.
my horse.
Hmm.
If he's going to stay here, you'll need to keep his stall clean. I'm not doing it. He knocks his grain out of the bucket, Then come the flies. I can't stand the flies. And he smells. He stands at my water trough all day, rinsing his mouth in the water. It's disgusting. You cost me insurance money the minute you set foot on my property. The monthly fee I charge you is nothing compared to what it costs me, even if you're buying your own grain. Even if you don't ride him, it's a losing proposition. I offered you a place to keep him because I think you're a nice person. His arthritis is bad. Nothing good can come from taking care of that old horse. I've so many good memories of him. He's going to have a hard time over the winter. See, he's losing so much weight. Yeah, sometimes I don't feel like feeding him. Sometimes I don't let him out. I have younger, gentle horses for you to ride, $50 an hour. You can lease one of my horses. Time for you to let him go. I can transport him for you. The vet's very good at what he does. He won't feel a thing. I'm not ready. Well then, get a shovel, pitchfork, and a rake. Use the blue broom. It washes easily. Get all the loose grain. I don't want the flies. You really love him, don't you? Yes, I do.
Oh, that encapsulates so many people's experience who genuinely love their horse, and how often they're treated badly by the very people who are supposed to be looking after them. And it's an unfortunately common experience. And it just,
So then what happened for me was, especially after that experience, I wanted to prove he still had worth. And so I hung out with him, and all of these funny poems came up in my mind because he and the horses around him in the field were so hysterical. Oh my God. They had personalities. I have a photo of one other horse. I took a selfie because he's leaning his head into my neck and this big tongue is licking me.
yes.
And he just did that to be goofy. So I had to record all these things because they were nuts.
Yeah, they're so funny when horses feel safe and they feel comfortable. They're hilarious. They're have a whole bag of tricks. Sometimes when we call them naughty, I tell people, I go, it's your horse just giving you a private lesson, trying to help you learn. And they do all kinds of
I love it.
private lessons for us all the time. But that first poem that you just read, it hit me on a deep level, because so many people who love their old horse, who consider the horse part of the family, they get a lot of ridicule, or they get a lot of pressure from other horse owners, trainers, barn owners, barn managers, that this horse has no value because you can't do XYZ. And I go, that's like saying a person has no value. No, my horse has value to me.
That's right.
Absolutely. And
Can
my,
I read one poem that I wrote in Remember This Day?
yes,
It's my
absolutely.
horse as an old man. My father-in-law especially identified with this poem. Okay. Okay, so this is called Old Man. White hairs pepper his sepia forehead below a thin black mane that cover the nether side of his throat like an old man's goatee. Light-eyed shadow, your dark eyes still large and curious. A chalky accent along the lean muscle of his neck. A patch here and there above his fetlocks, the side of one hock. War injuries, not age, the erectness of his posture suggests. The winter months are approaching, a time of year when he quickly loses heft. I monitor his eating closely, watch him slowly nibble his grain, prod him to eat more. His muzzle works methodically, slipping food past worn molars no longer capable of chewing. The farrier laughs when she comes to trim his hooves. Nothing to trim, she says. He shuffles like an old man. His hind legs cross as he rambles. I watch him head slowly to the far corner of the field, then double back at a happy gait. Not exactly a run, proud of his stride nonetheless. He has a thing for the mares. Neighs, expects them to respond. They glance at him for a second, go back to grazing. He makes an extra effort to rear up, tries to jump the fence separating him from them, though he's been gelded years ago. Perhaps he's forgotten. He has an agenda. Dirty old man, the barn manager calls him. I remember how we used to ride through lush East Coast forest, sail through the air over fallen logs, pass between trees with barely enough space for his torso and my legs, eat mulberries from low-hanging branches, avoid stinging nettle. Once we encountered a lone hiker with a monstrous backpack the color of algae. A fast load brought to an abrupt stop, a surprised hello. He warned about a copperhead poking his head out of the creek. I look at his frail legs and am reminded of the year he foundered, coffin bone twisted in the hoof, padded high-heeled horseshoes, special diet, minimal exercise. I remember the lightning complex fires, his evacuation, the helicopters, the pregnant cow escaping the stall next to his. I don't know how much longer I'll have him. Arthritis is rearing its own ugly head. Still, he shows off a feisty side, usually kept well hidden. Some have suggested I need to let him go. The winter will be very hard. Loss is a part of life. He looks up from his bucket of grain, gazes at me with kind eyes. A bit rusty, but I've still got it in me, he says. Give me a second. He presses his muscle against my cheek, a kiss. Old age is nothing, he reassures me.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's you. I think poetry wakes something up. As you read, it's like I can picture it and think of my own experience. And it just is a very tender way to share sort of that unspoken communication between us and our horses.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's nice
I'm
that
so
you
impressed that
are
you still have
documenting it.
yours.
Sorry, say that again.
I'm sorry. I'm so impressed that you still have your horse. Your
She
32-year-old.
she has been my greatest teacher as a professional trainer. I think the one thing that shaped how I teach and train has been having that very long-term relationship with a horse that came to me with no baggage. So I go, everything I don't like is part of our deal. And I've had to learn for it. I've had to go back and pay for my mistakes. And she's, it's a relationship. It is,
Yeah.
it's a very important part of my experience to have that. So I wrote down a couple of other poems that really touched me. One is simple, but really gets to the point. The poem you call Flying.
Okay.
Can you read that?
I love that poem. I mean, it's like you say, it's very short.
Very short.
But it just is exactly how I felt. Do I have the word boots in that one or shoes?
I have to look it up.
I have two
I think
versions.
boots.
I think it's boots.
Yeah, I think it was
Okay.
boots.
So flying. Put your boots on one by one. We'll go flying when you're done.
Yes. And to me, that captures every girl who loves horses. It really captures the feeling in your heart when you get your riding boots on and you head off to the barn and you always have this great picture in your mind of how the day is going to go, even if the day goes sideways. Every single time you put your boots on, it's that feeling of wonderful anticipation to go spend time with your horse. And I just loved that.
That can-do spirit. The
Hmm.
minute you put those boots on, I'm a rider. I can do this. I'm a horsewoman.
Yes. Yes. I thought that was great. And then one of the funny ones to me was the poem you wrote, Shifted Stance.
Okay,
I thought that was hilarious.
get that one. Shifted stance. As arthritis kicks in and his hind legs stiffen, my horse's affable attitude stiffens as well. Vegas has developed an acerbic old man's crankiness, a shrill whinny, a sharp refusal to follow simple requests. On the other hand, imagine my surprise as I watch him lift his right hind leg, turn his head gracefully, arch a limber neck, extend his muzzle close to his hock and inspect it. A show of flexibility I was never able to get him to execute on command. He then lifts his left hind leg, exquisitely arches his neck again to inspect that hock as well. And to think I offered handfuls of carrots all these years for an unenthusiastic half turn of the head.
I know. And I
Can
thought
I
it
read this
really,
one poem that I wrote?
it,
It's called The Water Trough.
yes.
This was because, like I mentioned in my other poems, Vegas was standing at the water trough a lot. So I went up to hang out with him and see why he was at the water trough. And there's like a cement platform, and I think it really helped him stabilize his posture with his two front legs on that platform. But funny thing happened. The other horses in the field were like, "Hey, what's up?" So they all came up. And it's like, you're all having a conversation with me. And it
Yes.
just reminded me of when people stand around the water cooler at work. Everybody starts joining and chatting. So this was the water trough. Owner's late, stale hay you ate, caught your tail in the pasture gate, need a chance to commiserate, take it to the water trough. Need to neigh, want to play, rather do nothing but laze all day. Prefer pasture to stall, come what may, take it to the water trough. Pass the time, escape the grime. Your eggs tell you you're past your prime. Think doing nothing is not a crime. Take it to the water trough. We're all there, even the mare, winning your hearts out without a care. But if you're sour, don't you dare take it to the water trough.
Yeah, that really captures the social interaction of the horses in the pasture. I just love that. And it's not so different from people. Horses are not all that different. But
And
I
then
thought
I
it
have
was,
this one, can I read? It's called Hooves, and it's about the farrier coming. The style of this poem is called the Ghazal. And so there are certain rules of like the last word of each line has to be the same word. The word before it has to be a rhyming word with that used in the stanza above it. And at the very end, you have to include the writer's name. So I added my middle name to the final thing. So there's all these restrictions, but I thought it just worked perfectly for mending hooves. Okay. Confined in his stall, he waits with pen hooves. The farrier's late to fix and mend hooves. He hates being hemmed in, prefers to rump, to stomp with his field mates, prance and wend hooves. He craves the freedom to gambol and play, to run with the herd, gather blent hooves. The farrier files and snips his hoof walls, applies her deft skills to trim and tend hooves. After phase treated, his feet he's released. Freed my horse runs once again to red hooves.
I love the cadence of that. Yeah, it sounds almost like hoofbeats as you read it out. I don't think when I read it, I had quite that cadence. I love that you read that.
Yeah.
And then
Some poems are better read aloud than
yes, than on paper. And the shifted stance made me laugh because we, try to get our horse to do something in our minds. It's so difficult and impossible, and we feel sorry for them as they age. And then they do something, and you go, oh, well, that was fine. When it's their idea. And so I want to see if I wrote down, I think I covered everything. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention, aside from Remember This Day, is your already published book of poetry. And you said more
yes, that's already
serious.
published, but it has different things in there. It's not just about my horse. I do have about my goats in there, and but they're more serious poetry about confronting crossroads in life. And for example, I was in a park when I saw a man who passed away on a bench, and a police officer ran to stay by his side while his partner went for help. And I was so moved by the police officer's compassion that I wrote a poem about that. And then my husband and I got caught in a terror attack in Nice, France in 2016 on Bastille Day. That was the one where a truck driver plowed through people
Oh,
walking along the
yes.
promenade and killed over 80 people and injured over 400. And it was just by sheer luck that I got slightly injured, but it wasn't worse because we were in a restaurant right below, and the waitress decided to take someone else's payment before ours. And so we're sitting there and we're kind of stewing, and we watched them pay and go up the steps, but they got injured and we didn't. We saw the
Wow.
husband afterward covered in bandages. And we didn't see the wife, so I don't know what happened to her. So I wrote a poem about that and how to overcome traumatic experiences and what we did to overcome it. So it's a lot of different kinds of poems in that collection.
Wow. That's well, and then you did the lighter side of horse manure, which is much lighter than that, but you still have some really touching poems in there, like even the farewell to your old horse. It's, everybody
Yeah,
dreads that
I can
day.
try to read that, but I may cry.
I may cry too. I brought it, I had to go get tissues because some of your poetry.
All right, here we go. Farewell to an old horse. And this one is written in the form of a sonnet because he was like my second husband.
Yeah.
I have to say that.
Yes.
I gave your lead rope to the vet, the toughest thing I've had to do. It meant I may still be there yet, no longer though, in care of you. You wouldn't eat the grain I brought. Our thing it is to say goodbye. A door will shut, last battle fought. We glanced and caught each other's eye. So you rubbed your head against me, love, then turned aside and walked away. Don't follow me, I'm going, love. Yes, even if you chose to stay. Farewell, my friend, the pain's too much. I missed your cheek, your muscles touch.
Oh, no, I can't get through that one without a few tears. No, and I've
I waited with
lost.
him for about 2 hours before the vet came. And he finally accepted some food from me, but you could just see that was it. And he leaned his head against my shoulder. And he was like, I just don't have the energy anymore.
No, and they tell us, because one of the hardest calls is to know when it's time, because we can help our horses ease out of this life, like we can't help people. Making that call feels like the biggest burden ever. But what I found is, as many times as I've had to go through that, and I am tears and snot every time. It never gets easier.
Yeah.
But the eye contact was that was my personal unique moment, was to
Right.
keep looking at my horse. And the most important thing was for them to know that they were loved and for them to be clear, telling me it was time. And
Yes, absolutely. What's interesting is my husband is terrified of horses. Absolutely terrified. I think he saw my horse over those 29 years. I think he saw him 3 times. And he freezes. He's 6'2", but he freezes. And I remember when our daughter was little, she was about 5 years old, and she said, Daddy, don't worry, I'll protect you. So when we came and the vet came to put him down, my husband accompanied me. And the vet preferred that Eric hold on to Vegas instead of me. So Vegas did it. He stood right next to Vegas and held the lead rope, held his head, and made sure that it didn't hit the ground first. And we had a blanket all set for him. And he was so despondent. Eric was.
Yeah.
And he said to me, I'm grieving too. He's like, I know I didn't come see him much, but he was part of my life through all the stories he used to share.
Yes. No, and it's such a gift that you share all those stories with the world too, because I think it touched something in me to go, I'm not the only one who loves my old horse. I'm not, or who sees the social interactions at the water trough, or all of those, the feeling of getting your boots on. And it was like feeling understood, or sort of going, I'm not the crazy horse lady. I go, we're all crazy horse ladies.
Yes.
But that common experience is just so beautiful to share in your work. I just love it. And even the hard parts. Because when
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that it touched you so much. It means so much to me.
yeah. And to have a horse for 29 years, I don't know
Can I
how
answer the
many,
question?
I don't know how many people keep their horse that long. But I do know that everybody who does finds a special kind of magic with the horse that we all can express in a different way.
And this was a side thing. I made a friend because I had my horse in his old age. She is a fellow poet in my writing group, and she wanted to meet Vegas. So she decided we were going to meet for coffee and write poetry and for an hour, and then we were going to go to Vegas. And she wanted to do this once a week. And she used to call it mucking and writing poetry. And so she would come with me, and she's French. So she came with her hat and her whole outfit, and she had boots. She didn't ride. It had been many years since she rode, but she came all dressed up. And I have a photo of us together. And I just cracked up laughing the first time I saw that.
Mucking and poetry. I love it. I love it. Because it is hard to capture, but it's why I think children gravitate to horses. It's how horses have this healing
Yes.
effect. And I did a podcast interview with a lady who teaches the heart math work. which is fascinating. And some of their research shows that horses' hearts are naturally in cohesion, and their hearts
Interesting.
actually affect the human heart rate. So there is a very
Very
real
interesting.
connection.
You know, when we used to do competitive trail riding, they do heart and respiration checks at the
Mhm.
beginning, and they check for swellings, and you're given a grade of 100. And then at the end of the ride, you only have a specific window of time to complete the ride. So everyone's finishing in the same amount of time. They check the heart and respiration again and see if there's any change in the swelling. So it's more a measure of how well you trained your horse and how well you took care of him and how well you fit the bridle and the saddle and took care of him on the trail. And I love that part about it.
I do too. I think that is the best part of competitive trail riding and endurance riding is the vet checks that they do on the horse. And I wish every competitive sport had those same vet checks as part of the scoring. I think it would make a better world for the
That was
horses.
funny. There, the woman who was a different bar manager back in Maryland she was fantastic, and she taught us all how to do competitive endurance trail rides. So she told us she went on a trail ride with her friend. Their both names are Mary. At the end of the ride, my Mary fell off her horse and she was unconscious on the ground. The other Mary grabbed the horse, ignored the one that was on the ground, and raced to get the vet check.
Oh
And we
no.
said, how could you do that to me? She goes, oh, I knew you were okay, but I knew we had to get the vet check.
Oh my gosh. That's how we think, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the one last thing I wanted to sort of talk about was I just saw this title in your bio called Who Wants to Be Friends with a Dragon? And it's a children's book.
Yes.
And it looked like it was published by something called the Dorrance Publishing.
So
And
this was
so,
co-written by a woman named Eve Marie Little and me, and illustrated by a guy named Mark Vicenti. It started because I'd lost my hearing and I like languages and I want to learn Spanish. So I was looking for a Spanish tutor. She, at the same time, was looking for a student because she just was looking for people to teach on the side. So we struck up this great friendship, and she would come to my house once a week. She learned a little sign language through playing poker with deaf people.
I love it.
And she taught me, and we would be looking at each other really close so that I could read her lips and she could correct my pronunciation. And so, because I was having a hard time hearing, she said, let's read children's books. So she would bring different children's books and we'd read them together. And then one day she said, Linda, it's time for you to write your own children's story. So we started batting around this idea about the dragon. And it became her story as well as mine. And we were just having a blast coming up with everything about this dragon. Usually you read about stories about accepting someone who's different, and it's from the point of view of the person that goes out and accepts the other one who's different. This is from the point of view of the dragon and how he
Ah,
self-isolates and says, oh, nobody would want to be friends with a dragon. He's so sure of it. Until he meets this little boy who says, no, you're fine. And they become friends, they play games. And then this boy invites the dragon to come to his birthday party. And the dragon's like, I don't know. This is not going to work out. And of course, when he comes to the party, he has to jump the fence. And so he lands with this big thud, everything goes flying. And the boy's like, it's okay, it's okay. They'll get to know you. And he asks they have the birthday cake and the mother can't find the matches. So the boy says, oh, the dragon can light the candles. And the dragon's like, wait, are you sure about this? And he's like, yeah, go ahead. So he takes this big, let me see if I can find it, this big puff. And he blows out the candles and everything else. Then, of course, in the aftermath, everybody's covered with soot.
Yes.
So he's thinking, now I've done it, they're going to kick me out. But instead, the kids were like, oh, yeah, that's so cool. Can we ride on your back? And so then they do all these different things with the dragon. And the dragon's realizing he can use all of his attributes as good things.
Right.
And at the end, I really like this. At the end of the book, the boy thanks him for coming to his party. And all the kids are saying, can you be my friend? Can you be my friend? And so the dragon says, you see, said the boy, winking. And the dragon looked at the boy for a long time and twitched his nose. Why aren't you afraid of me? The boy asked, why would I be afraid? Are you afraid of me? And the dragon laughed. No, but you're normal. What's normal? You're so cool. Ha, said the dragon. You know, you're cool too. The boy jumped on his back on the back of the dragon and hugged him tightly. This is my favorite picture of all.
Oh,
I love our illustrator. He got the emotion of the boy so perfectly.
he
So the
did.
dragon grinned. He felt amazing. So can I call you Spiky Mikey? Asked the boy. Only if I can call you Silly Billy. They both busted out laughing and we're so happy they were friends. So that's this book.
Oh, that is
This has been
awesome.
pretty successful selling. I've sold over 200 copies so far, and I sell mainly when I go to events, and then they just line up.
Mm.
Feel good
No,
about
it's a great story. And at first, when I saw some of your other stuff you had written, in my mind, it was a little kid meeting a horse for the first time, and the horse was this huge thing like a dragon.
it. Could be,
Yeah,
Nikki. That's what I was thinking about subconsciously.
because I have a niece who is definitely has that genetic horse girl anomaly, loves horses. Her baby is a little stuffed unicorn. And I have
Oh, that's precious.
when she first came to my place to meet the horses, suddenly that reality of how big they were, she was a little overwhelmed at first and then sort of worked through it and just loves them now. But I go, yes, there's something
Um,
genetic that gets triggered with some people and horses, but I love that story about the dragon and from being different and from the dragon's perspective, that his differences might be
and
his
it's
gifts.
running horses is very therapeutic. Like I'm going to start next week volunteering at this nonprofit called Reins in Motion, and they help disabled children, all different things, you know, autistic or muscle motor problems.
Hmm.
And they put them on the horses and they have someone on either side and they lead them through and they have to reach out and catch a ring, or they have to throw a ball into the basketball hoop, or they have to, you know, just different things like that. And they feel so satisfied afterward. I found out
Yeah,
about them through a deaf girl who's, I think she's 18, and she's deaf and blind, and her mother brings her there. And she gets so excited, even the thought when we talk about it, how happy she is when she's on a horse.
the movement and probably something to do with that heart coherence is definitely for all of us
Indeed.
very healing, very therapeutic. And it doesn't matter
I
if,
did use it to teach my son a lesson once. He had been kicked out of school for bad behavior. And I thought, okay, what am I going to do with this kid? Am I going to yell at him? He's already shut down. So I said, come on, let's go ride Vegas. So we went to the barn and I saddled him up and I put him on top of Vegas and just led him and walked him around. And he just burst out laughing. It was like, I think what you said, and he calmed down and he was happy. And then once we were done doing that for about an hour, I said, okay, now let's talk about what happened today. And it was a good, constructive conversation.
Yes. Yes. No, I have a good client who is actually in Maryland and runs a therapeutic barn specializing with autistic children and dementia patients, and really tracks her research. And it's so fascinating, especially with the dementia patients. They were remembering their weekly visit to the barns. They were making improvements with each visit. And so they've been sort of doing some research and documenting it, but definitely that interaction with a horse has a value. And that's why I go, there is no horse without value. Even if they can't be ridden, if they're
Exactly.
old, if they're too small, if they're too fat, if they're too lame, I go, it doesn't matter. The benefit of being around a horse is being around a horse.
What is the name of that therapeutic barn?
It's called Rose of Sharon Equestrian School, or Rose of Sharon. But I keep trying to get her on the podcast. She's just, running this nonprofit, always busy. And I keep trying to get her to do an interview because her work is amazing. But it's outside of Baltimore, in the, I think, Glen Burnie area. I'm not all that familiar with it, but it's called
Okay, yeah.
Rose of Sharon.
Because that's where I used to live in Gaithersburg, essentially.
Okay.
I say essentially because the neighbors changed the name of our neighborhood.
Oh,
It was still a Gaithersburg postal code, but they called it North Potomac.
oh, okay.
It's a little fancier, but Gaithersburg.
Yes. So anything final you want to share? I'm going to put in the show notes and in the
Um,
description box, I will put your website information, which is capital Linda, capital DRATTELL.com. And on YouTube, you're at Linda Drattell. And on
yes.
Facebook, you are author Linda Drattell.
Yes, my professional page is author Linda Drattell.
Excellent. So I will put all of that. If people want to pre-order your new book, The Lighter Side of Horse Manure, a collection of poems about horses, then you can pre-order on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And what was the local bookstore?
The publisher, Finishing Line Press.
Finishing Line Press.
At this point, it's not really considered pre-order anymore. It's just ordering, but it'll take a couple more weeks for it to be shipped.
Okay. Well, that is, I think, covering all the questions I had. Anything you want to share or add? And I loved this interview. I loved meeting you.
No, I think. Oh, did I read Love Does Have Boundaries?
No, you didn't. That would
We
be a
could end
great
with that
one.
one.
Yes.
Okay. My horse has lost his allure. He's rolled in cow manure. It's all over his mane, which is twisted again, his version of haute couture. I stay away from his front, which sadly is gross to be blunt. He nuzzles my face. I cry personal space. It then passes gas with a grunt. That was so him.
Love has boundaries. Yes. Not a hug day.
No, not that day.
Well,
Well,
thank
thank
you.
you so much. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having me. And I really appreciate you telling people about my books.
I really enjoyed your poetry and I'm happy to share it. And we
Me too.
are we are horse geeks, so of course we read.
Yep. If they're interested in the Remember This Day book, that's also Finishing Line Press. You just go to the same website, or you can go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble. They have all of them.
No, and I think I'm going to get that Remember This Day. That just sounds incredible. A little more serious poetry, but it just sounds amazing. And thank you for sharing your experiences with the world through your poetry.
It's my pleasure.
Excellent.
And,
So,
and I'm so happy for this connection, you know. Like my son once told me, when someone tells me how much they enjoy my writing, they said, anything else just icing on the cake.
yes, yes. Same thing about horses and helping horses, helping horse people. I go, everything else is icing. Yes. So thanks for joining us, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you back on the Horse Geeks podcast. Thank you, Linda, for joining us. And all of her information will be in the description box or in the show notes if you want to look her up. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you so much.
Bye-bye.